So, John, we've talked about, in general, the legal environment, the regulatory environment, the surprises that lawyers end up being pulled into, the things that people need to be playing in their mind, the chess game, so that you are hopefully thinking through these unknown unknowns before they happen. How would you apply this in an actual organizational setting from your experience and your knowledge?
Well, let's sort of take it, let's consider the ideal organization as far as I'm concerned. And with the understanding that we're not necessarily going to have an ideal organization anywhere that I've ever seen. In the ideal organization, you have whoever your oversight governance body is. In the private sector, that's going to be, a board of directors representing shareholders. In, public sector organizations, it's going to be, the executive branch or whoever is in charge of the agency, maybe an advisory group or some combination of that. But you're going to have some overarching governing body that is in charge of overseeing the executive, the officers of the organization, setting overall policy and saying, okay, these kinds of risks are acceptable and these kinds of risks aren't acceptable. What you should have in this ideal environment is then sort of a middle level of your operational folks, your legal folks, your security folks who are understanding and investigating and developing whatever the operations are, the business processes, the technology systems, the compliance processes, all of that. They understand how it works in terms of boots on the ground. All of this has to translate into boots on the ground somewhere. And a good auditor is going to go out there and see, are the boots actually landing on the ground the way they're supposed to? So ideally, you're going to be percolating up from the boots on the ground through people who know how to analyze that information and can tie back to, here are compliance obligations we've got, the legal analysis, here are operational needs, we need to be able to deliver this service, this is mission critical, so whatever else happens, we need to do this, and here's how we do it. The IT people who understand, okay, here's how the systems serve the missions of the organization, and here's what we need to know in order to understand how all of that is compliant. At the end of the day, these folks need to talk to each other and come up with a combined analysis that says, okay, here's what we're doing currently, a snapshot or an image of the current server. Here's what we do now, and here are the risks that we face. Threats, vulnerabilities, our best guess as to the probability that we will have certain whatever the bad events are, the vulnerabilities that allow for that to happen, what we could do about it, what they would cost. My opinion is that this is much more of an art than a science, and I think it will always be an art more than a science, because there's only so far that you can go with statistics. And we don't have great statistics, and we may, I don't know when we'll have we haven't been around that long, and things are changing, and they continue to change. So it's much more of an art than a science. We have to accept that. So you've got these people who need to translate that into a narrative risk analysis that they can give to the officers of the organization, the financial officer, the legal officer, the chief executive officer, COO. It depends on how the organization is managed, but the executive team. And the executive team reports that to the board and says, okay, we've got this level of risks characterized as such and such and such, and we could spend this much money on doing it to a certain level or not. And ideally, your board says, okay, well, we find this to be an acceptable level of risk, and we're not going to spend this much, but we'll authorize you to spend that much. In my experience, most boards would rather not hear about it. They should. It's part of their fiduciary responsibility, but it's also not something they were ever raised or educated to do. And so persuading them that this is something they need to pay attention to is absolutely something that if you're going to be working security or legal risk management in an organization that has security issues and what doesn't. You need to be able to talk to the board. You need to be able to talk to the executive team and say, look, here's why this is important. I can translate this into dollars. I can translate this into operational failures. I can translate this into reputational failures. I'm not just talking about some esoteric, mythical 400-pound hacker sitting on a bed in Phoenix. It's not that. And I'm not even necessarily going to talk to you about state or non-state actors, because that will cause eyes to glaze over too. Instead, you need to talk in terms of financial risks, operational risks, mission critical risks, the kinds of risks that the executive officers and the board actually understand and work with.